Okay, so we've got some really interesting stuff to dive into today, huh?
Yeah, definitely.
Some excerpts from Drico Flower's Divine Fusion 101.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, we've got your notes from March and some pasted text that you sent over.
Right.
So what we're really going to try to do today is try to get inside this idea that Flowers is presenting
Yeah,
this different perspective on sexuality and attraction,
absolutely.
all centered around this concept of vulnerability
Yeah.
and then how that's connected to masculine and feminine energies.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is going to be one of those deep dives that maybe kind of turns your thinking on its head a little bit about something that maybe you thought you understood.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this could be a real aha moment for some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, and I think what's really fascinating here, right from the get-go, is that Drico Flowers, he seems to be really challenging, how we typically think about these things.
Yeah.
He poses these questions like, what is sexuality? Like, what is one's sexuality?
Right.
And then this real head scratcher, this like one is attracted to, right? Is one's own attractions inevitably attracted to oneself?
Whoa.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
It's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
And, and that kind of that thread of self-reflection when it comes to attraction, I think is something we're going to want to keep coming back to
Okay.
as we go.
So let's break this down.
Yeah.
Let's start with this redefining of attraction
Right.
that Flowers is talking about.
Yeah, how are we looking at this differently?
Right. So how does he redefine it?
Well,
Yeah.
the way he puts it is he says that attraction is redefined as a spectrum of vulnerability.
Okay.
So
A
it's
spectrum of vulnerability.
it's not about, do we like the same things?
Right.
Do we have the same hobbies?
Mhm.
Is there a physical attraction?
Right.
In the first instance, it's about this sense of vulnerability or
Yeah.
the absence of it
Yeah.
that's drawing us in.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not what we typically think of.
No, not at all.
It's not about personality or Yeah. how someone looks or anything like that.
Right. This goes deeper than
It
that.
goes much deeper. Yeah.
This is something else.
Okay. So then this spectrum.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Okay, so it's not like, it's not a binary. It's
Right.
not like,
It's not like yes or no.
it's not like yes or no. This
Yeah.
is a sliding scale.
Okay.
And it's anchored by two key points, right?
Okay.
On the one end, we have lack of vulnerability.
Okay.
And on the other end, we have the capacity and capabilities of vulnerability.
Okay.
So it's like two opposite poles.
Yeah.
And that's what's influencing the attraction.
Okay.
In very different ways.
Okay. So let's take that first one.
Okay, so lack of vulnerability.
Yeah. The attraction to the lack of vulnerability.
Right, and Flowers says this, right?
Yeah.
This is a reflection of masculine energy. Now, when we encounter lack of vulnerability,
Yeah.
what do we actually mean by that?
Right. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, what does that mean in this framework?
Yeah.
Well, the briefing document, highlighted some possibilities, right?
Right.
Like strength, self-sufficiency,
Right.
even maybe like a degree of emotional reserve,
Okay.
like someone who is very much in control of themselves.
Right.
Like James Bond.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
good example. Yeah.
Okay. And this is a very,
Yeah.
this is a different way of thinking about this.
Yeah.
It's not, we typically think of like, okay, what are the qualities,
Yeah.
that we look for in someone?
Right.
This is something different.
Yeah.
This is like a deeper, maybe even like a primal draw
Yeah.
to someone who just projects this like aura of invincibility or self-reliance.
Okay.
And it makes you think, right? Like,
Yeah.
what need or desire does that fulfill?
Right.
In the person who is feeling the attraction.
Totally. Yeah.
Right.
Like, what's going on there?
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
it's like a sense of safety
Right.
or being taken care of.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
I don't need to worry
Right.
because this person has it handled.
Has it all figured out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So let's flip to the other side now.
All right. So on the other end of the spectrum,
Yeah.
we've got this idea of attraction to the capacity and capabilities of vulnerability,
Okay.
which Flower says is a reflection of femininity.
Okay. So this is really different.
Yeah, completely different energy here,
Yeah.
right? It's not about an absence.
Yeah.
It's about a presence.
Okay.
It's about a skill
Like-
of being vulnerable.
Okay. So.
Right. So like the briefing document, really pointed this out,
That-
that the emphasis on capacity and capabilities,
Mhm.
that's crucial here.
Okay.
It implies an attraction to qualities like emotional openness, empathy, the ability to be truly affected by another person.
Okay.
It's not just being vulnerable,
Right.
which can sometimes be seen as passive.
Right. Right.
It's having the strength to engage with vulnerability in a
Right.
meaningful way.
Okay.
Oh,
So it's almost like it's a strength in vulnerability rather than a weakness.
Yeah, it's like flipping the script.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Right. So it's saying
Yeah.
being open,
Yeah.
being emotionally available,
Yeah.
that requires a certain kind of inner fortitude,
Right. Right.
to do that,
Okay.
to put yourself out there like that.
And how does he connect this to femininity?
Right. Well, that's a big question. I mean,
Yeah.
is he using femininity in like the traditional sense?
Right.
Or is there something more specific going on here in Divine Fusion 101?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it's important to understand
Okay.
that, when Draco Flowers is talking about these terms,
Okay.
masculine and feminine energy, he's not necessarily tying them to biological sex
Okay.
or traditional societal gender roles
Right.
in a rigid way.
Okay.
It's more like
Yeah.
they're representing different energetic qualities
Okay.
related to the perception of vulnerability.
Okay.
So feminine energy in this context
Yeah.
might be more about embodying
Okay.
or appreciating that capacity for emotional openness
Right.
and connection.
Okay, so it's more about like
Yeah,
how we experience these things.
exactly.
Right,
Rather
rather
not
than-
about boxes.
Yeah.
It's about energy.
Okay, and that's really helpful
Yeah.
to kind of make that distinction.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the things that the briefing document points out
Yeah.
that's so interesting
Yeah.
is that this framework shifts our focus
Mm-hmm.
from, those surface level attributes.
Right. The checklist.
Yeah, the checklist.
Yeah. Of what we're looking for
You know,
from
you know-
a partner.
How tall are they?
No.
What kind of job do they have?
What's their hair like?
Exactly. All that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But to this much deeper
It goes deeper.
aspect of perceived vulnerability.
Yeah, it's about what we sense in the other person.
Yeah.
Intuitively. It's
Go on.
not about the list.
Yeah.
It's about the resonance
Right.
with their level
Yeah.
and type of vulnerability.
Yeah.
But this raises some questions, right? I mean,
Yeah.
this whole distinction between the lack of nodia and the capacity for,
Yeah.
as Flowers is presenting it,
Yeah.
could, potentially echo some
Yeah.
of those traditional gender associations.
Yeah.
Even if that's not his intention.
Yeah.
The briefing document kind of touches on this.
Right.
How does this
Yeah.
how does this framework intersect with how we already understand gender roles?
Right.
And could it reinforce those binaries?
Right. Because you can see
Yeah.
how associating, lack of vulnerability with masculine energy
Mm-hmm.
and capacity for vulnerability with feminine energy.
Yeah, exactly.
You can see how that might, inadvertently
Right.
align with traditional and sometimes limiting gender expectations.
Absolutely.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's a lens, right?
So it's a lens.
That describes certain patterns.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember
Mm-hmm.
that attraction and gender identity
Right.
are way more fluid and diverse
Yeah.
than any single framework
Exactly.
can actually capture.
This was one way of looking at it.
Right. And the FAQ we looked at
Yeah.
also points out this key difference.
Right.
That this definition of sexuality
Yeah.
is actually quite distinct from
Yeah.
the common understanding,
Yeah.
which, typically centers on
Right.
the gender of the people that we're attracted to.
Exactly. This is like a foundational layer beneath that.
Okay.
He's suggesting that the kind of vulnerability
Okay.
we are drawn to is the primary driver.
Check
And
that.
then that aligns with these broader energetic concepts
Okay.
that he lays out in Divine Fusion 101.
Okay.
And the briefing document, I think, quite rightly points out
Yeah.
the concept of vulnerability itself
Yeah.
is incredibly complex and subjective. What one person interprets as healthy emotional reserve.
Right.
Another person might see as unhealthy emotional unavailability.
Yeah.
It's all
Right.
filtered
Right.
through our own
Our own lens.
individual experiences and perspectives.
Absolutely. Like, it reminds me of
Yeah.
how people interpret, like,
Right.
a stoic expression.
Right.
Some people see
Right.
strength and reliability,
Yeah.
and other people see
Aloofness, lack of empathy.
aloofness. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so this brings us back,
Full circle.
full circle to that question
Yeah.
Flowers poses
Right at the beginning.
at the very beginning. That one is what one is attracted to is one's own attractions inevitably attracted to oneself.
Right, so.
So now that we've kind of unpacked this idea of
Yeah.
a spectrum of vulnerability,
Right.
how do we interpret that question?
Right, so in this context
Yeah.
of Divine Fusion 101,
Yeah.
what are we even talking about here?
Yeah.
Well, the briefing document suggests
Yeah.
this could be about a search for complementary qualities,
Yeah.
right? So if you see yourself
Yeah.
as leaning toward one end of that spectrum,
Okay.
say, a greater capacity for vulnerability,
Right.
you might be drawn to someone
Mhm.
who embodies
Yeah.
more of that perceived lack of vulnerability,
Right.
seeking a sense of balance
Okay.
or wholeness.
Okay, so like
Yeah.
opposites attract kind of thing.
Right. Or it could also be a reflection
Mhm.
of our internal state.
Okay.
Perhaps our attractions
Yeah.
are mirroring something within us, something that we are seeking to understand
Right.
or to integrate.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It's like we're holding up a mirror to
Yeah.
ourselves.
Yeah, like you're seeing something
Yeah.
in the other person.
Right.
It's like-
resonates with or
Yeah.
challenges.
Yeah, your own internal landscape.
internal landscape
Yeah, I love that.
of vulnerability.
Yeah, that's great.
And Flowers is presenting this as an open question.
Yeah, he doesn't give us the answer.
There's no easy answer.
Yeah.
It's really inviting
Yeah.
you, the listener, to think about it, to
Right.
reflect on your own attractions. What's
Yeah.
going on there?
And why?
Yeah?
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah, so it's not about him giving you a definitive answer.
Right.
It's about prompting a deeper
Yeah.
self-inquiry.
Yeah.
And it's crucial to keep in mind
Yeah.
that this isn't a rigid either scenario.
Right. It's not like you're only attracted to this or that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, as the briefing document and the FAQ emphasize,
Yeah.
this is a spectrum,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
You might
be attracted to.
find yourself attracted to different degrees
Yeah.
and types of vulnerability across different individuals,
Right.
or even within the same person
Yeah.
at different times
Yeah.
in different contexts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not about.
It's fluid.
Yeah, it's not about fitting people into
Yeah.
like a certain
Boxed
category. Yeah.
No, it's much more nuanced
Yeah.
and fluid.
Yeah, it's a dynamic,
Yeah.
right?
It's a dance.
Yeah, I like that.
It encourages us to look
Yeah.
beyond the simple categories
Yeah.
and to consider this underlying dance
Yeah.
of these perceived vulnerabilities that might be at play
Yeah.
in our connections with others.
Right.
It's about recognizing
Yeah.
that vulnerability
Yeah.
in its many forms. Plays this
Huge.
huge role
Yeah.
in the tapestry of human attraction, as Drico Flowers suggests in Divine Fusion 101.
Okay, so to bring it all together,
Yeah.
what have we learned today?
Right. What are the key insights?
Yeah.
Well, I think the core idea is this redefinition of attraction
Okay.
as a spectrum of vulnerability,
Okay.
with a lack of vulnerability
Yeah.
at one end,
Okay.
associated with what Flowers calls masculine energy,
Right.
and the capacity and capabilities of vulnerability at the other end,
Yeah.
connected to femininity.
Right.
And underpinning this whole framework is this really provocative question
Yeah.
about whether our attractions
Right.
ultimately reflect our inner world.
Yeah, and it's so important to remember.
Right?
This is a specific lens,
Yeah.
a particular framework
Right.
presented by Drico Flowers.
Right.
This is his way of looking at it.
It's one way of
Yeah.
understanding these really complex aspects of human experience.
Yeah, right.
It offers this potentially fresh perspective on why we're drawn to certain people.
Right.
It encourages us
Yeah.
to look beyond the surface
Yeah.
and to consider this deeper interplay
Yeah.
of perceived vulnerability
Yeah.
that might be shaping our attractions and our
Yeah.
connections.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
So to leave everyone
Yeah.
with something to think about.
Yeah, something to ponder.
As you're continuing to think about all this,
Right.
where do you observe these dynamics playing out?
Right, where do you see it?
Yeah. In your own life?
Yeah, like in the relationships and
Yeah.
attractions that you witness.
Yeah.
Not just in your romantic relationships.
Right, but in friendships.
Yeah, family dynamics.
Colleagues.
Even professional relationships.
Yeah.
Think
Think about it.
about, right, how does this
Yeah.
change
Yeah.
the way you see the world?
Yeah. And if attraction is fundamentally intertwined
Yeah.
with our perception of vulnerability.
Right.
How might that
Right. How might that understanding...
understanding shift
Yeah.
the way we approach intimacy and connection?
Right. It's really a framework
Yeah,
that invites ongoing contemplation.
it really does.
This dive into Draco Flower's ideas, I think, it offers a really
Yeah.
unique and thought-provoking
Yeah,
perspective.
absolutely.
And we hope it's given you
Yeah.
some new avenues to explore and things to consider
Yeah.
in your own understanding of attraction
Excellent.
and human connection.
Really fascinating stuff.
Yeah, it really is.
Thanks for bringing this to us.
Yeah, of course.
Really enjoyed this one.
Me too.
All right, see you next time.
Sounds good.